White House seeks to contain damage from personal data in Kennedy files. Social Security numbers, including for some people still living, were included in the 64,000 pages of documents that the Trump administration released this week. The Trump administration scrambled to minimize fallout on Thursday after exposing personal information, including Social Security numbers, of hundreds of congressional staff members, intelligence researchers and even an ambassador, when releasing files pertaining to the death of President John F. Kennedy. The exposure of personal details, as well as long-guarded secrets about Cold War spycraft, came as a result of the National Archives uploading 64,000 pages of documents related some very tangentially to Kennedy's 1963 assassination. White House officials acknowledged on Thursday that it was only after the papers were made public that they began combing through them for exposed details. On Wednesday, the White House ordered that the pages be combed for exposed Social Security numbers, and officials directed the Social Security Administration to issue new numbers to the affected people, according to a senior administration official, in an extraordinary response to mitigate the potential harm of the disclosures. Additionally, they will receive free credit monitoring. Declassified files typically remove personal information like names, Social Security numbers, and home addresses. William A. Carnage, a former government contractor, learned from a reporter that the administration had released his personal information in a file from 1977. "I consider it almost criminal," said Mr. Carnage, 71. In fact, the exposure could have violated U.S. privacy law, according to Mark S. Sabe, a national security lawyer and outspoken critic of Mr. Trump who has also pushed for the release of the Kennedy documents. However, he stated that a number of technical factors, including the data storage systems utilized, determined whether the affected individuals could sue for damages. The bottom line is that Social Security numbers are among the most prized data that the U.S. government seeks to protect, Mr. Sabe said. It is an egregious breach. The private information was made public as a result of Trump's eagerness to release the files without any redactions, fulfilling a promise he has made since his first campaign. The administration has hurriedly attempted to explain and rectify the situation, despite his supporters' praise of the release as government transparency at its finest. President Trump delivered on his promise of maximum transparency, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said in an email, adding at the request of the White House, the National Archives and the Social Security Administration immediately put together an action plan to proactively help individuals whose personal information was released in the files. Officials had to act quickly to deal with the exposed data, or face serious consequences, demonstrating the difficulties Mr. Trump makes abrupt policy moves. His national security team was stunned and forced to scramble after the president announced on Monday that he would release the Kennedy documents with only 24 hours notice. Administration officials had been working to make the records public since January, when Mr. Trump signed an executive order mandating it. But that process was still underway on Monday afternoon when Mr. Trump, during a visit to the John F. According to the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the files would be available the following day. By Tuesday evening, some of the country's top national security officials had spent hours trying to assess any possible hazards. Administration officials knew before the documents went out that releasing them without redactions would expose some personal information. According to one person with knowledge of the effort, who was granted anonymity to discuss the deliberations, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, championed the untouched pages. President Trump is ushering in a new era of maximum transparency, she wrote in an X post on Tuesday, adding, "Promises made, promises kept." Despite the limited number of redactions, nothing found in the papers so far has pointed to a second gunman or other conspiracy theories about Kennedy's 1963 assassination. Any new information was largely related to the CIA's clandestine Cold War operations, including spying on erstwhile allies. A former lawyer for the Trump campaign, Joseph DiGenova, 80, was among the people whose personal data was revealed to the public. According to the Washington Post, "It's absolutely outrageous," Mr. DeGenova, a frequent and ardent supporter of the president, told the newspaper, adding, "It's like the first grade, elementary level rule of security. To redact things like that." Mr. Trump himself has expressed little interest in the contents of the Kennedy files, telling the New York Times in September 2021 that he was not that curious about the papers. He released a larger trove of Kennedy-related documents during his first term, though he relented to intelligence officials and allowed redactions, something he would later express regret for doing. Judy K. Varga, who supports the president, nonetheless, said the disclosure of her personal data is not good for anybody. Ms. Varga, 80, is a former government contractor whose social security number was exposed. "People's private information should be kept private," she said.